David Faber is here this morning.
Well.
Hello.
And we do have some breaking news.
Just for today?
Just for today.
Oh, so you're not, okay.
Not back forever.
Okay.
No.
Not that you
What a
would.
tease.
We'll always have the 90s.
We'll always have Paris.
We'll always have Paris. You wore blue. The Germans wore
gray.
Yeah.
Remember every detail.
Speaking of movies, Warner Brothers Discovery is going to be splitting into two companies.
No.
That is the reason that I'm here. Not an unexpected outcome, perhaps, for many of its shareholders, of course. It was on May 8th that I'd reported that such a split was near, and that announcement is now occurring. Warner Brothers Discovery is going to be splitting into HBO Max, its streaming service, along with its studio Warner Brothers. That is one company, and then what they're calling Global Networks. They don't have a name for either one of these things yet. We like to wait on the names. Versant is taken into Global Networks, sports, news, television, of course, all the cable networks. They're over-the-air European business as well, international markets. They're big in Poland, for example. The Bleacher Report, all of that goes on the other side. Obviously, that is where the bulk of the cash flow from the company currently comes from, and it is also where the bulk of the debt in this split will go. The total indebtedness of the company as of last quarter was $34 billion. The leverage ratio down to 3.8. Most of the debt will be going with that unit that produces most of the free cash flow. And the other part, of course, will be seen as, they hope, a growth business as well. Last quarter, HBO Max, the streaming service, did somewhere in the range of about $340 million in EBITDA. The hope is it'll get to about $1.3 to $1.5 billion this year, along with the studio seen to get as high, perhaps one at some point in the not-too-distant future, is $3 billion. So you put that together, you hope that's growing, you don't put a lot of debt on it. Now, a couple of things here that were not sort of previously reported on, at least by me. One is that the Global Networks business is going to own up to 20% of the streaming studio business, and that is something that it will allow it to sell fairly quickly, I'm told, perhaps as soon as over the first year once the deal closes. And so that will be another way that the company can deleverage. The other is they're going to try to pull off a very large tender offer with their bondholders, and for doing that, they have borrowed under a bridge loan $17.5 billion from J.P. Morgan, and they will be immediately tendering to bondholders at a discount, obviously, but at a premium to the current trading price of many of these bonds, which are trading at a more significant discount, and at the same spread that they were issued at, by the way, in the hopes of vastly reducing their overall debt profile and taking away any potential power those bondholders perhaps are seen to have in terms of saying or putting up some difficulty. Now, there is not an expectation on management's part that there are any indentures or anything here in terms of the ability of the bondholders to actually do something that would stop the deal in some way. But they also want to significantly reduce the overall interest payments, debt load. Then you would replace the bridge loan, guys, with secured debt as well, which would be senior to any debt holders who were left. So you've got what was expected to be the split. In many ways, at least, we've been expecting that. By the way, David Zaslav will run the incoming streaming and studios business. Gunnar Wiedenfels, who's currently the CFO of the company, will be the CEO of Global Networks. But beyond that, you've got this 20% or up to 20% ownership stake that will, in a sense, it almost represents cash, but it gives them an option as well should this thing take off.
Well, it's the same thing that happened with AT&T. When AT&T spun it off, they held onto a portion of it, too.
A bit. I think they got out very quickly, if not, I remember, almost immediately in terms of that split.
When will this take place?
They expect it to close within a year. They're calling it the second half of 2026 in terms of a close. Now, in that way, it doesn't need any real approvals that you could imagine being difficult. There's no broadcast networks. No. The FCC has no real role here.
The only question is, I guess you do this with the expectation that somebody does a deal down the road, maybe the streaming side of things, like that's where you would have oversight from the administration to be able to.
If there were further deals that were coming, and to your point, and Becky, obviously, it's an important one. I think there's an expectation or a hope, certainly on the streaming side, that there may be opportunities to be a consolidator.
Not to be consolidated.
Yes, not to be consolidated, although if Apple or Amazon were to come calling, and that's been the case, by the way, for some time, I'm fairly certain they would take that call and have a discussion. But that said, Joe, you know, Peacock, obviously, and Paramount are seen as potential consolidation plays or could roll
is
into
Versant,
something. Who knows?
Versant is a potential consolidation.
For the global networks business, I don't know. We are going to be starting life at Versant with a lot less debt. We're going to have
Would you want to take on that debt?
We're going to have a leverage ratio. I think what I've sort of picked up somewhere in the range of 1.5 times. Right. This thing is going to start life with a far higher leverage ratio. Obviously, a lot more cash flow as well.
Brian was early once again on things.
Yeah, although we didn't get NBC, we didn't get Bravo.
Okay, it's different.
Are we allowed to now talk about them and us? Is that?
We can definitely do that. But I think this whole deal would have been announced earlier if that French Open final hadn't gone
5 hours.
5.5 hours, because you saw, David was there. My friend Dustin, he travels in some interesting circles. I love that guy. You were watching?
I did watch the end.
Was it not unbelievable?
Incredible, yeah.
There they were.
By the way, can you imagine being on a tennis court
for 5.5 hours? I was thinking the same thing.
And playing,
doing what they were doing. Did you see some of the shots? The one where he picked it up off the court. He was back here like this, bending his, and it was perfcly placed.
It's incredible. Speaking of sports, by the way, all of the sports rights will remain with TNT, even though HBO does, the streaming service does air certain games. All the sports rights will be. They lost basketball, but they still got NASCAR and hockey and baseball and college football and the NCAAs. Yeah. So there is still a decent group of sports rights there as well.
Think about taking the jacket off?
I did, but then I thought, I'm Squawk on the Street. You're Squawk Box. We were jacket on the Squawk.
It starts with Squawk.
I did think about it.
Did you know that it's 30 years? I think. August. It's 30 years.
We started Squawk Box?
Yeah, you're going to obviously have to be at the.
30 years ago?
You're going to have to be at the. If we have a party, you're going to have to be.
But yeah, it's one of the most important things I did here in all these years.
Both of us.
Yes.
I know we don't. I don't want
to. Do you remember Haynes almost passed out? He almost couldn't do the show. That first show.
You remember who our guest host was?
Joe Battipaglia.
The late Joe Battipaglia. And we had that hideous electronic board before.
We thought it was the coolest thing.
And my wife was producing.
Yes, she was. Penelope was producing.
Just beating me like a drum back then. Just like
to watch.
Just like
it was wonderful to see.
I don't want to. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for
fittingly with big news about someone that was one of our best friends.
That is correct. David Zaslav, of course,
selling advertising for a cable business channel.
Now going to be running what they say will be, and they believe it's obviously a pure play, will be the streaming service, 150 million homes, and the biggest maker of TV and movies. So, again, I'll be very curious to see the reaction in the stock market. Right. Obviously, as you guys well know, it has not been a good run, as the linear cable networks have simply gotten crushed to a level that was not even anticipated by the most pessimistic people.
I still think he's done great in terms of just getting rid of the debt. No one could have done it any better. I don't know if I would have bought it
down over this time.
They've gone from about 5 times leverage to 3.8 times. Yeah. So a good amount, at $34 billion now.